Let me ask you a question right out of the gate. What are you actually chasing? Is it a massive career milestone, a certain lifestyle? We all have that distant target that we believe will finally, make us feel complete. But what if the very act of chasing that goal is completely misunderstood? Welcome to today's Explainer, where we're going to break down a really thought-provoking story that just entirely flips our traditional ideas of ambition and success on their head. I promise you, by the end of this, you're going to look at your own personal goals in a fundamentally different way.
So, our story centers on a young boy named Ayaan. He lives in this small, kind of dusty village surrounded by these beautiful green hills. And he's known for being incredibly quiet, but endlessly curious. While all the other kids are out playing cricket or flying kites, Ayaan is the one sitting alone, just watching the sunset. And every single evening, right before the sun dips behind the hills, he sees this strange, shimmering golden light on the horizon. Now, to everyone else, it's absolutely nothing. They just brush it off. But to Ayaan, it's a beacon. He genuinely believes this light is calling directly to him.
Naturally, Ayaan eventually asks his grandmother about this mysterious light, and she gives him this incredibly profound answer. She says, "Some lights are not meant for everyone, Beta. Only those who truly seek them can see them." Man, this completely validates his internal experience. It sparks an absolute fire inside of him. He realizes that this light isn't just some pretty optical illusion to stare at. It's a calling. It's an invitation to step out of his comfortable, totally predictable village life and go after something meant only for him. It's exactly that moment we all face when we realize a dream isn't just a fantasy, but a directive.
So as the years pass, this fascination grows and grows until he literally can't ignore it anymore. Ayaan decides he just has to follow the light. One morning, without making a big fuss or, telling anyone, he quietly packs a bag. And get this, he only takes water, some bread, and his old notebook. That's the whole shebang. This perfectly captures the allegory of starting a really daunting personal goal. Because notice what he doesn't pack. He doesn't bring a map. He doesn't pack a step-by-step instruction manual. He just takes the bare essentials for survival and a place to write down his thoughts. So often, we paralyze ourselves by over-preparing, right? Thinking we need every possible tool before we can take step one. Actually, scratch that. We think we need the whole staircase before we take step one. Ayaan shows us that to begin chasing your light, you really only need sustenance and a willingness to just walk out the door.
But of course, the path is never easy. The sun is harsh, the road is long, and almost immediately he hits a wall of resistance. The first person he runs into is a farmer who actually laughs right in his face, asking, "Why chase something you can't touch? Stay here, work hard, and live a simple life." I absolutely love this quote because it hits the nail on the head regarding the very real-world resistance we all face from the practical doubters in our lives. You know exactly what I mean. When you announce you're going after a massive, unconventional dream, there is always going to be someone telling you to just settle down, be realistic, and conform to the status quo. But Ayaan, he doesn't argue. He just smiles politely and keeps on walking. A little bit later down the road, the external pressure shifts from mockery to straight-up fear. He encounters a traveler who warns him, "The world beyond those hills is uncertain. You might lose your way." If the farmer was the voice of societal conformity, this traveler is the voice of our own inner anxiety, that deep fear of the unknown. The traveler represents the people who project their own insecurities onto your ambitions. They aren't laughing at you. They are genuinely terrified for you, which honestly can be so much harder to ignore. Yet, once again, Ayaan simply thanks the man and continues moving forward. He is absolutely resolute. Now, the physical escalation of Ayaan's journey is absolutely crucial here. Just think about how the difficulty ramps up. Day 1, he leaves home. By evening 1, he reaches the first hill, his heart is racing, and the light actually looks brighter and closer. But then, days turn into weeks. The journey becomes incredibly grueling. He's navigating pitch-black forests, crossing freezing, rushing rivers. Weeks turn into months. He is scared. He's totally alone. There are countless moments he just wants to turn back and give up. See, this isn't some quick movie montage where everything goes perfectly to an upbeat soundtrack. No, this is the messy, grueling middle part of the journey where that initial excitement completely wears off and all that's left is the daily grind.
And it's right in the middle of that grueling grind that something monumental happens. One night, he is exhausted, he's starving. He sits down under a tree, and he simply opens his notebook. He'd been writing down all his fears, his scattered thoughts, and documenting the people he met along the way. I really want to slow down here for a second, because this quiet, unassuming moment is the psychological pivot of the entire story. When you are entirely depleted by your goals, you have to stop and reflect on the data of your own experience. Ayaan reading his notebook is essentially him holding a mirror up to his own soul. As Ayaan reads his own words, this stark contrast reveals itself. He realizes something profoundly strange. He has completely changed. The old Ayaan was shy, quiet, and just passively watched sunsets from the safety of his little village. But the new Ayaan, the one documented in those worn-out pages, is brave, strong, and deeply determined. The intense adversity of the dark forests and the constant doubters on the road didn't break him. They forged him. He wakes up the next morning with this budding realization that maybe, just maybe, this light isn't just a destination to reach, but a catalyst for who he is actually becoming. Still, the journey requires completion. After many months, he finally arrives at the base of the tallest mountain he has ever seen. His intuition tells him this is it. This is the final step. And the story describes the agonizing physical toll of this final climb in vivid, brutal detail. His hands are in sheer pain. His legs are trembling uncontrollably. The freezing cold wind makes it nearly impossible to even draw a breath. He is pushing himself to the absolute limit of human endurance. It builds this immense emotional weight right before the climax. It's always the darkest, hardest push right before the breakthrough, isn't it? But he refuses to stop. And then, he reaches the summit. Just as the sun begins to set, Ayaan stands totally still. And there it is, the golden light. But here is the massive twist in the narrative. It's no longer far away. It isn't a beacon on the horizon anymore. The light surrounded him. It is everywhere. Ayaan closes his eyes and physically feels the warmth of it, enveloping his entire being. This is the emotional climax we've been building toward this whole time. The distant object of his obsession is no longer something to be observed from afar. It's an environment he is actively existing within. In that incredible moment of warmth, Ayaan finally understands the true nature of the light. It had never been a physical place at all. It was the mechanics of the journey itself. First, it was every single agonizing step he took. Second, it was every paralyzing fear he faced down, like those heavy warnings from the traveler. And third, it was every act of choice he made to keep going when all he wanted to do was quit. The light wasn't a geographical location at the top of a mountain. The light was the sum total of his resilience. Tears fill his eyes, and it's not out of sadness, but out of the sheer power of this realization. The light eventually fades into the night, but Ayaan doesn't panic because he knows he no longer needs to chase it. It's inside him now. He makes the long trek back to his village, and when he finally arrives, the people are totally stunned. He doesn't just look older, he looks visibly wiser. His grandmother, the one who encouraged him at the very beginning, asks him, "Did you find what you were looking for?" And Ayaan just smiles this soft smile and replies, "Yes, and it was with me all along." He's a completely changed person. He doesn't just sit around watching sunsets anymore. Instead, he dedicates his time to helping others find their own light. Which brings us to the ultimate thesis of today's explainer. The light was never something to reach. It was something to become. We spend so much of our lives hyper-fixated on these external destinations. We constantly tell ourselves, if I just get that big promotion, if I just reach that massive subscriber count on YouTube, if I just make X amount of money, then I will have captured the light. But this story so beautifully illustrates that the destination is really just an excuse to embark on the journey. The journey is the forge. The obstacles, the doubters, the grueling timelines, those are the tools shaping you into a stronger, braver, more determined version of yourself. You aren't actually chasing the goal. You are chasing the person you have to become in order to achieve the goal.
And that brings us right back to you watching this right now. We started off by asking what you are chasing, but I want to leave you with a much better, much more provocative question. What is the light you are becoming? Seriously, don't just look at the mountain in the distance. Look at the notebook in your hands. Look at the fears you are facing today, the choices you're making to keep going, the resilience you are building in real time. Because if you do that, you might just realize that the very thing you've been searching for is already right there with you. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. Think about that question, and I'll catch you in the next one.